get the speaker box loud, hitting that stuff till you hearing that sound. Yo, get the speaker box loud, hitting that stuff till you hearing that.
This is the Suzuki eAccess, Suzuki's first electric scooter for India. I first saw the eAccess earlier this year at Auto Expo, and today we have spent some time riding the scooter as well. But before we tell you how it is to ride, there are two caveats. Firstly, we only rode on the go-kart track, which means how it rides in the real world is something we can't comment on right now. And secondly, it hasn't been launched yet, so we don't have prices. So how the eAccess fits in the Indian EV ecosystem is something we only know later on. Firstly, let's talk about how the eAccess looks. Now, while it's called an eAccess, it looks almost nothing like the actual Access 125. It looks more sporty, but not like the Avenis. In fact, it looks a little retro in some ways and sporty in some ways, almost like a sporty scooter from 20 years back, and that's not a bad thing. What I personally love on the front end are these indicators, which look really sweet, and even the LED headlight looks very nice. The one thing I find a little overkill is this LED DRL strip, which is just a bit much happening on the front end. Now from the side, the eAccess does look quite sporty thanks to that sweeping front apron. And it might look small in pictures and videos, but the seat itself is quite large, which makes the scooter feel a little on the bigger side. But from the side, it might remind you a little bit of the normal Access 125, but because it has a two-tone thing happening at the back, it reminds us of the Hero Vida a lot. But my favorite part of the design has to be the rear end, which looks very nice. This LED tail light is very good looking. The indicators, just like the front, look superb. But I just love how these panels kind of bend over the indicators. It looks very sporty and very nice, something that's very unique, like nothing else on Indian roads. Now the eAccess might look sporty, but Suzuki built this as a family electric scooter, and for that they've given it this large seat. But the best part here is that even though the seat is large and wide, it's easy to get your feet down because the seat height is a super low 765mm. And the seat itself is quite long, which means I can have someone my size sit behind me very comfortably. Even the seat foam is fairly stiff, which means if you spend long hours in the saddle, it should be quite comfortable as well. That said, the floorboard is a bit on the smaller side, so if you have very large feet, you might find it a bit of a struggle, or if you want to keep a bag, it might be a little difficult. But of course, you have the option of keeping your feet up on the apron, just like on the Bergman, which should help in making it more comfortable over a long ride. Now a family scooter has to be practical as well. As I mentioned, the floorboard isn't very large to keep bags, but you do get two hooks, one on the apron, one under the seat, to hook up some grocery bags, which should make it more convenient. And you have this multi-function key right here, which you can use to open the boot. Best part here is that the boot stays up by itself, just locks in place, which means taking stuff in and out is very easy. And to put the boot down, just seat up, and that's it. That said, the boot itself is quite small. You can maybe fit a small half-face helmet in there or some groceries, but considering that this is an electric scooter, I would have wanted more space in the boot. This just feels like a bit of a miss. Now the reason why the boot space is so little is because the battery pack is located right here under the seat in front of the boot, and that does take up a lot of space. That said, this battery pack of 3.07 kWh gives this a range of 95 km claimed, and it takes around 6.5 hours to charge on using a home charger, while a fast charger takes 2 hours and 12 minutes. That said, this battery is an LFP or lithium ferrophosphate battery, which does have a lower charge density that makes it a little larger. But that said, these batteries are more reliable and they have a longer lifespan, which means the battery should last as long as the scooter does fairly easily. So how much range can we expect in the real world? Well, we are riding on the track, belting it pretty much the whole way, and we saw a range drop of around from 96% battery SOC to around 54%, and we calculated with the number of laps we did, we are getting around half a kilometer per percentage of charge drop. Now that would translate to around 50 kilometers of range on a full charge if you're belting the scooter, that is. But if you're riding it normally, cautiously, like how people normally ride on the roads, you should be able to get around 75 to 80 fairly easily. That said, the scooter also has 3 riding modes: Mode A, Mode B and Eco. Now Suzuki has these weird names for the modes. It makes it a little difficult to understand, but basically Mode A gives you the full top speed, which is 71 kph. So does Mode B. The difference here being Mode B gives you almost no regen, while Mode A gives you max regen. And then you have the Eco mode, which gives you max regen and a top speed of 55 km/h limited. Now the thing is, if you want to switch modes, you have a button on the console. Just push it to switch from A to Eco and back to A, or B to Eco and back to B. But if you want to change from A to B, you have to come to a full stop and then hold the mode button for a couple of seconds. Confused? Well, so are we. Now, Mode A and Eco gives you the maximum regen and Mode B gives you the least regen. Mode B feels like a normal scooter. When you roll off, it kind of sort of freezes a little bit, while Mode A and Eco give you pretty strong regen, which feels almost similar to a second gear in a 100cc bike. It feels that strong. And in fact, I could do a full lap on the track with no brakes at all. So in the city, that should actually work quite well and give you some energy back in your battery too. And then of course you have the reverse mode, which you engage by holding the brake and pushing the power button down for a couple of seconds. It goes into reverse mode, and then if you want to move backwards, all you do is just move the throttle in the other direction and you're going back. Now, because the eAccess is meant to be a family scooter, performance isn't on top of its list of features. The performance is adequate from its 4.1 kilowatt motor in the middle of the scooter, which drives the rear wheel using a belt drive, which is under this cover here. Now, because this is a covered belt drive, Suzuki says that it has a very long life. They claim 70,000 kilometers or 7 years, which is actually fantastic. But more than the outright performance, what's most impressive is the throttle calibration, which feels super accurate and super predictable. Now, this is something Suzuki apparently has worked on quite a lot, and it shows when you ride the scooter. Even when you are going through corners or riding quickly, you can get exactly the amount of torque you want from the motor, and it just works seamlessly. Now the eAccess is running on 12-inch wheels at both ends, but even with that it feels quite nimble and will change direction very easily. Even in the slalom we had on the track, we just go through that so quickly, and at the same time it feels very stable once you're leaned over as well. The scooter is not the lightest in this segment. It's 192 kilos curb weight, but honestly when riding it, you don't feel that weight at all. It feels much lighter, more like a normal pedal powered scooter in that sense. But in order to get that handling like that, the rideability is a bit on the firmer side, especially at the back. The front end feels quite nice over the bumps, but the back feels a little bouncy. Of course, we had these plastic speed breakers on the track just for our experience, and the front went over them fairly well, but the rear does give you a jerk, and if you are faster, it throws you a little bit off the seat as well. I think this is meant to be used mainly with a pillion at the back to make things a lot better. The other things that the eAccess is not very big on are features. Now, it does get a color TFT screen, but at 4.2 inches, it's tiny compared to other screens we have seen on other e-scooters. But it does have a lot of features like turn-by-turn navigation, call and message alerts, as well as weather alerts. But this is something we couldn't test today because the Suzuki Ride Connect app doesn't have the eAccess listed in it as of now. That said, it does look fairly premium. It shows you everything you need fairly clearly, and even the switchgear look quite premium as well. But the mirrors themselves look a little too old school, which doesn't really go well with this design. So, will we recommend the Suzuki eAccess to people who are looking for a new electric scooter? Well, at this stage, we can't say for sure because we don't have prices for the scooter right now. Now, the eAccess itself is a pretty good scooter. It has decent range, okay performance, and it's quite comfortable and handles well too. For a family scooter, it does check a lot of the right boxes. But if the price goes over 1.1 lakhs, it's going to be very difficult to recommend because it simply doesn't offer enough in terms of features or range. But if Suzuki can get the pricing right, maybe 1.1 lakhs or even 1 lakh, that would just seal the deal and make it a great scooter for the whole family.